This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Nam.
And this is Jamal Dajani.
Jamal, we're really fortunate to have you be with us again today in your undisclosed location. I think it's okay to disclose today that you are in, historically, from the Arab and Muslim world perspective, one of the most impressive, beautiful, and amazing places in the world. We're speaking with Jamal live from Granada in Spain. Tell us a little bit about Granada and the rich Arab and Muslim history, Jamal, before we get into some of the politics and issues going on right now.
Well, I'm going to sound a little bit like a tour guide for Granada, but I think it should be on everyone's list or everyone's must-visit list when they travel to Europe. It's a beautiful city, rich in history, and of course, this is Arab Talk, and Granada has a very rich Arab and Muslim history stretching for more than 800 years, and it still does, actually, in a way, because the biggest attraction, in fact, for those who don't know, the most visited site in all of Spain is Alhambra compound, which houses the Emir's palace, and it basically was the center of power for many years here. It's the most visited place in entire Spain, Alhambra. So it's a lot of things, actually. Also, you could compare, the visit. Of course, it's a beautiful palace. It's amazing the way architecturally, the beautiful tiles, the beautiful fountains, the gardens, everything about it. Even the way the gates were structured, they were structured in a very creative, defensive way, so to delay invaders. It's a masterpiece, I would say. It's definitely a masterpiece. But the interesting thing about it is I was like reading, because every night, even though we studied a little bit about the history of Andalusia and the history of when the Arabs came. I mean, at the end of the day, Arabs were invaders. They came into Andalusia as invaders. Tariq bin Ziyad, who crossed Gibraltar, and that's why it's named after him, on behalf of the Umayyads,
right,
who were based. This is the caliphate that was based in Damascus, or Dawla al-Amawiyya in Arabic. And then since then, they've had different dynasties. It's grown after that main invasion. Pretty much the Arabs controlled, I would say, the entire Iberian Peninsula, and that's Spain and Portugal, and they've reached the Pyrenees mountain into France. But you could see the remnants. I mean, the kind of the golden era, right here in Granada, and of course also in Cordoba and other places. But in Granada, it's really, to me, is the jewel of that whole history. And also you learn about the last dynasty, and there's a lot of connections, historical connections. One, for example, the discovery of America, by Christopher Columbus. Of course, we know there are different stories about the discovery of America, that he wasn't the first, but let's say, assuming that Christopher Columbus was the first person to discover America in the year 1492, right? That was the end of the presence of the Arabs in Spain.
That's right.
That's when on basically January 2nd, 1492, just Abdullah Muhammad bin Ali, or Muhammad the 12th, known as Bu Abdil, he was the last sultan of Granada, and who headed the Nasrid dynasty. The Nasrid dynasty belongs to the Bani Nasr tribes of Arabia. He surrendered the city and handed over the keys of the Alhambra to the Catholic monarchs Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile.
That's right.
So there is a connection almost with the discovery of the New World, beginning of an era in the Americas, and then the end of the Arab presence in Spain and in Andalusia, and then kind of looking at the history itself and how they rose into power through, it was like the center of science. They've attracted all these scientists, philosophers, poets, artists.
But
everyone wanted to come here.
Right, but that's kind of the main point that we miss a lot in the narratives of, what was happening in 1492. I mean, the missing part, at least in terms of what is articulated here in the United States and in the Americas, is this 1492 with the emphasis on Ferdinand, Isabella, and Christopher Columbus. What's missing is the 800 years of art, science, physics, mathematics, astronomy, and kind of the golden age of enlightenment in the world well before Jamal there was any kind of enlightenment in Europe. Because when Europe was in the Dark Ages, we had this thing going on with the great dynasties in the Iberian Peninsula, in Granada and Cordoba, of this really amazing kind of expansive development of human intellect and human art and human science. It was, by any standard, really a remarkable time in the world.
It was, and then even though I would say, I started by saying, at the end of the day, the Arabs came here as invaders, just like any empires, the Romans and the Greeks before them and so forth, but they left a lot behind. And in fact, when we talk about the 800 years of history, in fact, it's longer, because this is the 100 years of continuous rule and the end of basically the dynasty itself. But then there was a whole 150 to 250 years of strong Arab presence here, and they were referred to as the Moriscas, and those are the basically the Arabs who stayed behind, didn't leave with the Sultan and stayed until the year 1609, basically, when the Moriscas, who basically were either forced to convert to Catholicism or they had to leave, so they were expelled. So there was another period, in a way,
right.
that even after the departure of the Sultan and his basically his dynasty, many of the Arabs, because they were owners of businesses and they had a lot of wealth here, they stayed behind. And then again in 1609 there was a massive expulsion of them. And then at the end of the day, many of them still stayed because they intermarried, and some went to the caves and lived with the gypsies, and that's why you have the culture of flamenco. The culture is so intertwined. I mean, you can't turn around without seeing basically the influence, the Arab influence on architecture, on music, on, everything basically.
How about food?
And of course, food, which is great food, by the way. So it's it's a lot to learn about, and then I started reading a little bit about the history, kind of the last dynasty.
Yeah.
And again, I make the connections. We made the connection with the discovery of America, but also I make the connection with the demise of that dynasty and the demise of the Arab world currently, because their demise was all the rivalry and the fighting between the different emirs,
right,
Arab emirs, who were controlling basically the Iberian Peninsula, and they were kind of, fighting each other. They were conspiring with the Spaniards. They were creating allies with the Europeans against each other, trying to undermine each other. And this is exactly what's happening in the Arab world now. So I see also a parallel of the lack of unity or the disunity that kind of brought down the the dynasty, the Arab dynasty, in the Iberian Peninsula, and we've been seeing this ongoing for the past decades in the Arab world.
Before we transition to current politics, Jamal, I think it's important to speak a little bit about one other aspect of the great dynasties in the Iberian Peninsula, the great Arab Muslim dynasties. And the other thing that doesn't get spoken about that much is, in fact, how multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-religious it was at a time, not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but if we look at where we are in the world right now, with especially in terms of American politics and European politics, with division, divisiveness, Islamophobia, xenophobia, what's happening on the border with Mexico, all of these things, kind of ironically, that time in the great dynasties in Granada and Cordoba, they were amazingly inclusive of all religions and all ethnicities. It was a very diverse, multi-ethnic, multi-racial society.
You're absolutely right. I mean, and this is also, it wasn't a black and white. So when they had the Arabs were in control here, it wasn't just like Arabs, being homogeneous here. The Christians who were here prospered. The Jewish population in Andalusia also prospered. In fact, one of the reasons that cemented the influence of the Arabs or the control of the Arabs all over the Iberian Peninsula was that the local population, who were heavily taxed and abused by the rulers,
basically monarchs,
they actually welcomed them,
right?
Initially, because they just wanted, they saw how they were inclusive, and they stayed and supported them, at least in the initial few hundred years,
right,
because they were part of the system, and that's why I said, there was a Jewish culture in Cordoba, for example, of the Mizrahi or the Sephardic, who are the Jews of the Orient. They've had synagogues. They've had, they were also part of the palace. Maimonides, the famous scientist and rabbi, who was originally from Egypt, was basically an advisor to the Sultan.
That's right.
So you had that. You're absolutely right. You had that inclusiveness, and then, it's like I said, that's kind of the sign of culture, the sign of growth, the sign of a center of discovery, research. If you go to the palaces, of course, the palaces are beautiful, but there are also several museums that you actually can see. You're in the medical field. You see the first instruments for surgery.
That's right.
They were all on display there. You see astronomy, instruments, all these things for calculating, the astronomical data and so forth. It's actually mind-boggling to tell you the truth. It takes a lot. That's why I'm spending a lot of time, because it takes a lot to learn all about it.
We're speaking with Arab Talk co-host Jamal Dajani, live from the center of historic Arab Muslim Spain in Granada. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm broadcasting live from studio here at San Francisco, and we're able to speak with Jamal through the wonders of modern technology, which probably in some sense had its foundation in historic Granada, Cordoba, the Arab Muslim, centuries of what can I say, grand human development during those 800 years. Unfortunately, Jamal, we have to take a little departure from the glory of the years of that dynastic rule in the 800 years in the Iberian Peninsula, and we have to bring it back to an unfortunate reality that is with us today. And what we're going to do first is that we're going to survey and reevaluate the deal of the century, the Kushner plan, peace plan. The deal of the century has hit another, whatever the opposite of apex. I guess nadir is the opposite, another low point, because if listeners have been paying attention to what we've been saying is the deal of the century has been a catastrophic failure. And there are many aspects to the failure of the peace plan, but I think most people in the world, Jamal, would argue that one of the critical aspects of Israeli occupation and ethnic cleansing in Palestine has been the expansion of settlements. And even prior to Donald Trump, everybody internationally agreed that the settlements were illegal. Every president before Trump articulated international law, even though they may have softened it a little bit. Everybody in the world agrees that the settlements are illegal colonies on stolen Palestinian land. However, what we have nowadays with Kushner and Greenblatt and Trump, we have a changing of the narrative because now they are referred to as disputed neighborhoods. So with that in mind, we had a major announcement this week and want to get your read from the Arab and Israeli press about the announcement, and the way the Israelis presented it was really, really disturbing as this kind of gift of the peace plan, Jamal, that the Israelis were going to build 6,000 new illegal colonies on stolen Palestinian land, but also offer a few hundred building permits to Palestinians. And this was pitched, Jamal, as part of the ongoing, march toward the Kushner Peace Initiative.
Well, what I put this under is Hasbara Central. That's what I call it.
Hasbara Central, exactly.
And if people don't know what's the meaning of Hasbara, this is Israeli propaganda. So this is Hasbara Central, and you're absolutely right. Benjamin Netanyahu actually announced the approval of the construction. This is how the media put it out, of 6,700 homes. 700 of these homes will be allotted for Palestinians, 6,000 for colonial settlers. So the idea that he was presenting it, that this is Israel's doing something good, because usually they announce the construction of settlements for basically the colonial settlers, and this time said, no, we're going to be building new homes also for Palestinians. But look at the ratio. And in the ratio, you could read the apartheid part in it, Jess.
Yes.
That's why sometimes the Hasbara Central tends to kind of bites them in the behind. They kind of outsmart themselves. So by saying that, they're trying to portray this kind of like inclusiveness. But if you look at it, okay, number one, let's start breaking it down. All these homes will be built on stolen Palestinian land. All these homes are illegal. They are basically in occupied territory.
They're illegal.
But if we look at the ratio, now we go back to the ratios and how Israel treats the Palestinians. You are talking about building 6,000 homes for Jewish settlers, while you're building only 700 homes for Palestinians. Now, if we're talking about the Palestinian population in the West Bank, it's about 2.8 million.
Right.
The settlers about 700,000 to 800,000. So even if we want to talk just ratio-wise, let's say this is, as they say, disputed territory, or Israel controls the territory. Even when they practice this, they cannot avoid practicing apartheid.
Exactly.
They cannot avoid apartheid itself. So how do you build these poor Palestinians? And by the way, this is the first time, so we're not even counting all the other homes that they built for these illegal colonial settlers there. But if we're going to start like from an equal or playing field, you're building 6,000 new homes for a minority group,
right,
while you're building 700 homes for a majority group. How do you define this?
Well, we define that as apartheid, and part of the apartheid aspect of apartheid, Jamal, in South Africa was never as good at this as the Israelis are, is being able to use Hasbara to pitch it But I think that the audience here is just an audience of one, because who Benjamin Netanyahu is speaking to is not to the Europeans, not to the Africans, not to Southeast Asia or anywhere else in the world. He's speaking to one person, and that one person is Donald Trump, because the American foreign policy, in order to take that shift from occupation, illegal settlements to disputed neighborhoods, Jamal, is a radical shift in U.S. policy that could only come under the direction of Donald Trump, Jared Kushner, David Greenblatt. And the influence of AIPAC. There's no other way that could happen. So Netanyahu, who has his own problems, as we know, is only speaking, I believe, to one person, and that one person is Donald Trump.
Well, that's why I say, even when he speaks, even when they, go through the Hasbara Central route, they expose themselves.
Right.
Because, even with this, they expose themselves. They're so transparent what they're trying to do. And again, like you look at the ratio that they're trying to offer Palestinians, it's kind of sickening to even listen to Benjamin Netanyahu talk about it. But this is one of many things. And they have a lot of trouble because since we're talking about this whole topic of apartheid and discrimination, Israel has its own issue now with the Jewish Ethiopians.
That's right.
Who have been demonstrating because they've been treated like garbage in the country, even though they have been forced to serve in the Israeli military and everything else. They've been discriminated in schools. They've been discriminated on buses, and recently they've been killing their youth.
Right.
Almost parallel to what's happening in the United States when cops kill African Americans or people of color. And they've been demonstrating, and for the past years, they've actually brainwashed these immigrants from Africa to Palestine to basically to use them as border control police to kind of attack Palestinians wherever. And now in their demonstrations, they have been calling for Palestinians to demonstrate with them.
That's right.
In order to expose Israel's apartheid. So this is because you're asking me about the news, these images in the news, and if you read the Israeli media, it's a big slap in the face of not only Benjamin Netanyahu, but also his buddies, our U.S. ambassador, Mr. Friedman, who, by the way, recently attended a cabinet meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu, which even the Israeli media itself criticized and commented on it. Why are you bringing? It's very unusual to bring a foreign country's ambassador to a cabinet meeting. And Jared Kushner and Greenblatt and all those who are trying to sell the concept of, Israel is the victim and the Palestinians are just not accepting this deal of the century, this great deal of the century. So I think like a lot of things are coming together that Israel is basically, grasping to the last straw when it comes to Hasbara Central and when it comes to kind of trying to whitewash its image, when the entire international community, and certainly in Europe, they understand this game, I think, much better than the United States, because the media here talks about it in a neutral way.
Right. You're listening to Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. We're streaming live at the kpoo.com website, and all of this will be posted, obviously, to all of the accounts, SoundCloud, Facebook Live, YouTube. We'll get to that at the end of the show. But Jamal, speaking of Hasbara, you recently posted a very interesting video on Facebook that has gone viral. Some 20 million people. Now that's big time, man. Posted a video which has captured the imagination It's gone viral. It's captured the imagination of, tens of millions of people now, Jamal. You need to break it down for our listeners, number one, and then number two, let them know where they can see this video. It's very compelling.
So it's actually I would say viral. It went super viral because I don't think CNN has 20 million views on its videos
for anything
in less than 3-4 days, basically.
Right.
Yes. So this video, last I looked at it, it's over 20 million views right on my Facebook, which is Jamal Dajani 2. So for those people who want to see it, and of course I'm grateful to the person who forwarded to me. And I'll come back to the video, but basically, going back to the Israeli propaganda and the Hasbara Central, and this is part of the whole campaign, the campaign of Benjamin Netanyahu going to Bahrain, trying to establish an embassy there,
right,
and into the Gulf region and so forth. So Israel has recently, through its foreign ministry, invited 6 hand-picked Arab bloggers. They cherry-picked 6 bloggers
from all over the Arab world, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you exactly. They had a delegation, basically, all expenses similar to those junket that Israel flies the congressmen and congresswomen from the United States to go there. They handpicked 6 Arab bloggers. The delegation of bloggers included from Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Iraq, Jordan, Egypt. This is according to the Israeli media. So with the exception of Jordan and Egypt, of course, as our listeners know, none of these countries has formal diplomatic ties with Israel. So they're projecting this move, to see that, normalization is basically being unfolded now. Now we can bring Arab bloggers, and next time we bring Arab journalists and so forth. So they've sent these invitations, all expenses paid. Now I don't know much about the other bloggers, because the one who made headlines, basically, Jess, is the Saudi blogger who the video you're talking about, who you've seen basically in this video. Actually, I've posted 3 videos, but one of them, the other 2 had several thousands views.
But this had 20 million. Views. Yeah,
this one had 20 million. And it's not what you see in the video, it's what you also hear in the video.
Right.
And of course it's in Arabic. So this Saudi blogger is, of course, he's accompanied by his Israeli handler walking the whole city, and he gets chairs tossed at him, swears, insult, go back, you are a traitor, you are blah, 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 you don't belong in this sacred city, everything, And I'm being nice. I'm being nice because some of the words I can't say them on the radio. And for whatever reason, it just kind of, spread like fire. But basically, because people recognized him, because the Israeli media has been parading him
everywhere
for the past weeks, even before he came.
Right.
And he made stupid statements saying, like, Israel should control Jerusalem, and Palestinians can stay in Lebanon. Things that really were very hurtful. For Palestinians, and so when people recognize him, of course he's hard to miss, because he has, number one, what you don't show in the video, you only see one of his handlers, but I'm sure they had security, and he's wearing a full Saudi attire. So it's not hard. He wasn't hard to miss. And earlier he was taking pictures with the Israeli Knesset members. One of them is the name will come back to me. Is one of the he's a Likud Knesset member. His name is Yehuda Glick. I don't know if that rings a bell.
No.
But he usually part of the groups that break into Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And they go and they have plans to replace Al-Aqsa compound with the Jewish temple. He actually belongs to that group, and he goes and incites Palestinians. In fact, he got shot one time. So he has a big history of incitement. So he goes with him and poses with him in front of the Knesset. Of course, that's plastered all over the Israeli media. It's plastered on the internet. It's plastered on TV. And that's why people reacted to him the way they reacted, because, as you know, Palestinians are very hospitable. If any foreigner, they're actually eager to meet foreigners,
right.
And they're very welcoming. Right. And it's not like not only Arab foreigners who actually, many, Arabs go to visit there, whether they're Egyptians or Jordan or from Jordan and other countries. They usually are welcomed. But this guy was used as a clown, and that's what I said about him, basically, and paraded around to incite and intimidate Palestinians, and they've sent him a very strong message, and so that whole Hasbara part
failed. It failed.
And it failed and backfired.
Well, Jamal, I think that I'm hoping that this video makes its way into the U.S. press, maybe hopefully through your Facebook account, and maybe somebody should put more English subtitles on everything that is said, because that would also make it even more compelling. But the reason Israeli Hasbara fails is because it's based on a lie. And all Israeli Hasbara, their narrative, is built on lies, deceit, illegality, and basically assaults to international human rights. So I guess it's no surprise that the Hasbara failed, but what is surprise is the depth and the breadth of 20 million plus viewers looking at this and being able to see the reality of the Hasbara and how it fails. So my question to you, Jamal, how, in what universe do the Israelis, the Americans, the Saudis think that people are going to watch these bloggers and say, oh, I guess things are not so bad in Palestine. Maybe we've been wrong for 71 years. Are they that delusional to think that somehow the Arab world is going to look at these bloggers and change their minds?
Well, I mean, you have few, that's why I said these bloggers were cherry-picked just because with what's going on, and I have to say some of the Israeli Hasbara does work, some, and because of the millions of dollars that Israel pours into it, and because of the Hasbara trolls it hires, there's
right.
a whole department behind it. So they find some ignorant and weak minds. And I said they can cherry pick few clowns, like the Saudi clown, to come. Which, by the way, he has been denounced by thousands of Saudis, and he by no means, when we talk about him, he is a representation of the honorable citizens of Saudi Arabia. And then they'll find somebody, from Lebanon, or they'll find somebody from, you can always find someone who is willing for a few dollars or for a free trip or a free meal to kind of, march in your parade. But in this case here, and you don't hear about these stories time and time again, because I watch always a lot of, I spend a lot of time also monitoring social media. You see a lot of crazy things and stupid things, but you don't expect that they'll get this kind of attention like this thing here, especially because all of these things are happening at the same time. The Kushner parade, and then this clown's parade, and what's happening, in Palestine itself. there is this big push that Israel has been doing. And if we want to even expand on this, and the major attack on the BDS movement abroad,
right,
on college campuses in the United States, in other countries, it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's basically to whitewash the Israeli crimes and to basically label pro-Palestinians as anti-Semites, because this is what's the attack on the BDS movement.
That's exactly right, Jamal. And although we don't have time to talk about it today, there has been some recent developments in the BDS movement, both at the national and the state and local levels, both contradictory because the anti-BDS rhetoric is making its way through the Congress, both in the House and the Senate. Even the so-called progressive candidates within the Democratic presidential cadre who are running for president right now, except for just a handful, not even a handful, maybe just two, have come out strongly against criminalizing the BDS movement. There's going to be some more developments on this that will be very interesting, which we'll have to bring up at another show, because we do have to transition from Israeli Hasbara to U.S. Hasbara and what's happening to the congresswomen who have been labeled as the squad, and the vicious, racist, xenophobic attacks that the President of the United States continues to go after these 4 women of color. Now he's going after Elijah Cummings, kind of an icon in the African American civil rights movement. He's attacked Elijah Cummings as being racist. So Donald Trump is calling Elijah Cummings racist. He's called the squad, these 4 women of color who are duly elected by their constituents to represent them in the Congress, as racist. And now, and you and I have talked about this, Jamal. We've always talked about how this can be an incitement to violence. Well, that incitement has reached a new level. And within the last couple of days, there's been a gun store in North Carolina that has taken out a large billboard with the pictures of the 4 congresswomen of color, Ayanna Pressley, AOC, Ilhan, Omar, and Rashida Tlaib. And it says, basically, the 4 horsemen are coming. And for those of our listeners that may not fully appreciate that reference, it's a biblical reference to the 4 horsemen who came to destroy the world, basically. This was, the 4 horsemen were basically a sign or a presence of the end of times coming, destroying civilization. Now, for Trump to endorse the xenophobic, Islamophobic, send her back rhetoric is a level of incitement that is truly disgusting. But Jamal, I'm afraid to say that this level of incitement is reaching even a higher level when a gun store in North Carolina is now advertising it. When you see the ad, and I'm hoping you're going to post it on your Facebook, when you see this ad, it looks like it's basically saying we need to take up arms against duly elected congresswomen in the United States House of Representatives. This is beyond unacceptable. It is, in my humble opinion, crosses the line into some sort of illegality, because I'm not sure what else besides this, Jamal, is an incitement to violence.
Well, it is an incitement to violence. You've described it clearly, and you've described, you're right, many people don't know that this is something biblical, this whole analogy. Maybe some people don't know that. But also, we are in an era now where Donald Trump has pretty much given a carte blanche for these type of things. And we're not talking about his MAGA supporters and these type of crowds, but you're talking also about politicians. Rand Paul, if you remember, said that he would help pay for the airline ticket to send Representative Ilhan Omar to Somalia.
Unbelievable.
I mean, this is. I don't know if you saw that.
I didn't.
This is in an interview with the right-wing website Breitbart last week. I was reading about it. He said that Congresswoman Ilhan Omar is ungrateful as you can get. This is what he said, ungrateful. I mean, here is a politician, here is someone who came here to this country, got elected by her constituency to Congress. He calls her basically un-American. When you are a member of Congress and you're ungrateful to the United States, you're an un-American. This is what he's calling her. And so he said, and I'm quoting, and so I'm willing to contribute to buy her a ticket to go visit Somalia, and I think she can look and maybe learn a little bit about the disaster that is Somalia, that has no capitalism, that has no God-given rights guaranteed in a constitution, and has about 7 different tribes that have been fighting each other for the last 40 years. Of course, now he gets into the racist part and makes himself an expert on Somalia. And then he continues, maybe after she visited Somalia for a while, she might come back and appreciate America more.
So
Jamal, from Rand Paul, which I'm sure his father would have been very disappointed, because I can't imagine his father would have said something like this.
So let me ask you a question, Jamal. Do you think that white congressmen or congresswomen, when they criticize legitimately the policies of the United States, are ever called ungrateful? Isn't it interesting how only women of color in the Congress and men of color in the Congress, when they have the audacity to criticize certain policies of the United States, as soon as a person of color is criticized, is critical of policies, they're labeled as ungrateful. The subtext, of course, Jamal, we know the subtext, right? That only people who are white, who belong to the dominant class, are allowed to be critical. If you're critical on a person of color, you're automatically labeled as ungrateful. And for Rand Paul or anybody to do this to Ilhan Omar or any congresswoman of color or any congressman of color, anybody, just because they're critical of policies that are clearly racist, xenophobic, and really doing harm, we've reached a level, I think, of incitement that, we just haven't seen. This is and by the way, Jamal, tonight is a very important night. Donald Trump is having a rally in Ohio. And the big thing that I want you to give a prediction on, because people in the crowd are going to say the MAGA chant, which is send her back. They're going to say that tonight. What is your prediction as to what Donald Trump will say once the crowd starts saying that? Because he's tried to distance himself initially from that chant, and then he took it back, and now he's been getting more heat for it. Let's see if you could put your prediction hat on. You've got your European style hat on right now. For our listeners can't see this, but you'll see it later on YouTube and Facebook. How will Donald Trump respond to his expansive racist attacks when he hears the send her back message tonight?
Well, I mean, this is, again, another opportunity for Donald Trump to go over his long laundry list of attacks on everyone who criticizes him, for one thing, starting, with Ilhan Omar, with Rashida Tlaib, with the OAC, to Al Sharpton,
right,
haven't mentioned recently,
right,
they were buddies, as far as I recall. So this will be an opportunity for him to kind of go down the line and name, and of course another opportunity to kind of comment on the Democratic debates, I would think. and then everything is unpredictable. He's gonna kind of play along with however the wind is blowing. If this is the chant, he might go there, because I don't think now he's gonna stop, or he's gonna end his attack on any of these women, and women, of course, of color. I mean, the guy calls if you're the president of the United States, you represent the entire United States. You represent every town, every city, every locality. And what did he call Baltimore, right?
Right.
I mean, it's embarrassing to be an American in Europe, or to talk about the president of the United States talking about a major city, as the way he was talking about it.
No, that's right, Jamal. I have
rat infested, and the terminologies he uses, basically, he repeats them time and time again.
Okay, I have a prediction, and this is and you should know this because you lived in New York. Donald Trump's strategy is to double down, triple down, and quadruple down. So my prediction is that you will hear those chants tonight coming from Ohio residents going to the Trump rally, the MAGA crowd, and Donald Trump will do nothing to dial the tension, to dial the racism, to dial the hate, to dial the incitement down. He will double and triple and quadruple down. In whatever way he does it, it's no way going to change the dynamic that he has created right now, where he's attacking every single person of color that is critical of his policies. I mean, Elijah Cummings has served his district and has served his country with dignity and honor for decades as a representative for Baltimore. And for him to attack Elijah Cummings is beyond the pale.
I don't know why you think it's beyond the pale, coming from Donald Trump, because anyone who is good is bad for Donald Trump. Donald Trump would rather praise the likes of Epstein, he has been hanging around with rapists and child molesters like Epstein, and the list goes all the way. How many of them are now serving in jail or under indictment. Look at the crowd he surrounds himself with.
Well, that's exactly right.
So, this is his crowd, and then anyone else who is decent or halfway decent who attacks him, he's going to just basically load up on him with all kinds of crap, attack him, make up things. It doesn't matter. This is the thing. He should be the last person throwing a stone at people, and yet he does it. He lives in a house of glass, literally, but yet he keeps throwing stones at people like as if he's the most decent person and everyone else is not.
So, Jamal, I want to add something to the attack on Baltimore, which is an amazing American city. Of course, with problems that any major American city has, but Baltimore is a great, amazing city. Now, for him to call Baltimore infested is kind of interesting, because Donald Trump's son-in-law, Kushner Properties, and the Kushner Company have thousands of apartments in Baltimore that they have engaged in, basically slumlord policies against the residents of Baltimore. And what I mean by that, building these apartments, not maintaining them. The apartments are run down, the rents keep rising, and they try to evict the people of color from these apartments. So his son-in-law is basically a slumlord in Baltimore, and I think it's kind of ironic that he would choose to criticize Baltimore when his son-in-law and daughter are benefiting greatly from slumlord practices in Baltimore for many decades now. Just kind of interesting.
Well, again, he doesn't care. He basically doesn't care. You're talking about his son-in-law being a slumlord. Donald Trump himself is a slumlord. If you look at the history of the apartments he inherited from his father,
right,
and the history which is documented, of evicting people of color and raising the rents on them, and cases of discrimination, how many times they have been reported to the housing authority. It's all documented. I mean, so like I said, now nothing surprises me that comes out of the mouth of Donald Trump. We have a few minutes, just quickly, because about the debates, Democratic debates.
Right.
We can talk about this next week, and I've been viewing them. I'm not impressed. I am not so far.
No.
I mean, I'm
my
going
prediction,
to go by with what you have been saying.
My prediction is coming true.
Donald Trump will likely to win in 2020.
Yeah, the Democrats are weak, Jamal. And they did that, and the big debate last night was disturbing at many levels. Everybody on stage, including Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, did not strike me or anybody as really super sophisticated in their policies and their points. But more disturbingly, you saw a concerted effort to attack the former president of the United States, Barack Obama. So you have Democrats using Republican talking points, Democratic candidates for president using Republican talking points to attack each other and to attack Barack Obama, to attack one another. It's a farce, Jamal. It's embarrassing, and I hate to say this, but everything I saw last night, unfortunately, supports my really tragic prediction that Donald Trump has a solid chance of being reelected. It's really tragic. What can I say?
Yeah, they have to change their strategy. I believe that immediately, maybe yesterday, not today, at least half of them should just go home and drop out of the race and stop wasting our time. Because if they're going to keep doing this, and then here comes supposedly the September debate, and wait till the end of the year, and we still have 20 plus people competing, there is no way on earth.
That's right.
That a Democratic candidate will win. I have to say, I did like basically the only, I would say, Bernie and
Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren kind of ticket is the most feasible one. So they should consolidate around this and stop wasting our time talking about nonsense and attacking each other instead of attacking the policies of Donald Trump, the racism, the xenophobia, and then just going and talking about whether Obamacare was good for the country and not. And also, we should be also factual. And here is a fun fact, and maybe some people might not like this, Jess.
Yes.
But we also have to, admit the mistakes of Obama.
That's fine. No, but
that's
fine.
I'm not going to talk about the international level, but
no, but that's fine.
Obama deported more than 3 million immigrants.
But okay.
Versus 2 million who were deported under George W. Bush, and less than 1 million under Bill Clinton. So even the Trump administration isn't deporting people as fast as Obama did.
Yeah, but that's
a fact.
Yeah, but that's not the point right now. The point right now, as a candidate, is your strategy, and the strategy is a losing one. On that bombshell, though, Jamal, we have to say goodbye to our listeners. You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO, San Francisco 89.5 FM. We're going to be posting all of our shows to all of our sites where you can catch them on podcasts at ArabTalkRadio.com. Go and check out this crazy viral video on Jamal's Facebook account. It's Jamal Dajani 2, the number, Jamal Dajani 2 on Facebook. And Jamal, any final comments before we sign off?
No, let's hope we have let's see if this kind of democratic debate is going to take a better turn, because
It's not looking good.
it's not looking good. And so hopefully we can start covering something substantial with these candidates, new ideas that they can come up with, new plans, instead of just cannibalizing each other.
All right. We'll see everybody next week on Arab Talk. See you next week, Jamal.
See you next week.